records. Smell the cover, read all the verses. Tell me about your favorites on vinyl and vision.
I don't know what it is. You want to just go?
Sure. Let's go for it.
I can live with this if you're cool with it. I'm fine.
I'm sure I've done worse.
Okay.
So nice to see you, man.
Nice to see you too.
It's been a long time.
Decades.
Yeah. I guess we might as well just, like, kind of get right into the whole thing of like what brought you out to Portland.
Oh, yeah, that was like 13 years ago. I moved out there. I just kind of was finally all these projects were wrapping up in Rhode Island, where I like had done a bunch of solo work, but I had a record coming out that hadn't launched yet, and Ibu Gogo, the band I was in, wasn't touring anymore, and like it was a space in between a bunch of stuff, and Rhode Island was feeling very small town to me, and this was a moment when I thought I could, cut a new path somewhere, and I have family out in Oregon, so it made sense to land there. So it was just a sea change moment that I come upon every decade or so of like, all right, I got to rattle my cage and do something crazy. And I'd been in Rhode Island for 15 years before that, so it felt like a good time. Like I wasn't in the middle of anything dire or in a band that everyone was there and I would be abandoning it kind of thing. It was like
It felt like a good time to exit.
There was a window of freedom that it made that you could do that kind of thing and it wouldn't necessarily cause too much damage to your relationships or whatever. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think I had listened to a lot of your records. I think I've listened to just about everything that you have, at least that's digitally. Yeah. I mean, because we have been talking about doing this for a while now, so I've had a lot of time. So I can't remember what record and what song it was now, but I think there was a song that you kind of mentioned that story of like kind of like getting in your car and just driving out west.
Yeah, it was a little haphazard. I definitely just I took a bunch of boxes to the post office and whatever fit in my car and the rest went on the curb, and I left at I always think about it that I left at like 8 p.m., which is not a time you leave to drive across the country. It makes no sense, but it probably tells you something about my psychological state in the moment. I was like, I gotta go. So I just kind of left my stuff on the side of the road and took off and slept on couches when I got there. And so,
wow.
Yeah.
So you didn't even set anything up? Like you didn't have an apartment to go to? Like you just kind of...
But I had siblings and they were all having children. And so I wanted to be there too to torment them as an uncle. And so and they were all very generous, letting me crash on their couches for probably months. I don't really remember, but it was probably a while before I landed and got stuff. But I'd gone to high school there for a year, so I had friends out there too. It wasn't raw. Like of all the places in the United States, I knew the most people there. So that still, compared to Rhode Island, that still made sense,
Yeah. Are you not there now? You keep on saying there.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not. I'm in Rhode Island right now.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, sorry.
What the fuck?
I could be at your house right
now. Yeah, why didn't you just come over?
No, I just got here a short while ago. I just moved back after years and years. So
okay.
Sorry, that makes a lot more sense. I'm saying there and
yeah, I was just like, where are you? Like in Seattle or something? Where'd you go?
Yeah. So it's still new to me. I'm still kind of reeling from being back here, but I'm out in Bristol right now. I'm not in like Cranston and where we grew up,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It feels a little foreign to Providence, where I spent the most time, but
right.
It's a little bit different of a world out here, but I'm on this coast.
Oh, okay. Cool, man. Well, welcome back. My brother Oscar was just out here last week.
Is he? Where's he living?
He's in Portland.
What?
Yeah. He's been there for like, I want to say like 13 years, probably.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Yeah, we haven't seen him in 8 years. He came back last week for like 10 days. Yeah,
that's insane. I had no idea, and I never ran into him, but I wasn't really out and about, and my friends were my friends. Like it was weird after 13 years there to not have that. I wasn't very embedded in the community. Sounds like same as him, just not. I had my friends, but they're mostly the same friends I started with there,
Yeah.
Exception of a couple, but I didn't feel like I was leaving my hometown per se.
Yeah. So what brings you back to Rhode Island?
A bunch of stuff, but it's funny enough that you asked me that what made me go in the first place. It's kind of the inverse of that, but it's another sea change moment for me. And I have a feeling this is a pattern where I just every I want to say decade or so, but I don't know if that's really true. But that was definitely true last time of where I just need to like upset my situation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a window, maybe. There's a window. Like I was renovating my house for a year or two, and I had spent enough on it that it was almost not cost effective to live in it. And so it just seemed like the right time, and I got in a relationship out here that I wanted to come back and nurture and see about, and I hadn't really, I don't know, just antsy to play music, and I don't know, it just kind of made sense and it was a little easier on me in that it wasn't Providence or Cranston either, so it feels like I'm not exactly coming back to the same area because I have a lot more history in those areas, some of which is not, some of which is trauma and some of which is not. So I would have been less likely to move back if it was Cranston or something.
Speaking of that, like I was saying how I was listening to a lot of your music. I bought your last record, Here You Go.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I was speaking with Brendan, he was telling me about it because I think when I was speaking with him, you were just putting that out.
Oh, yeah, it must have been. I think that's right.
Yeah. And and he kind of mentioned it as being like a really, I don't know how he worded it, but he basically said it was a very like honest and like intimate record, and it's a little gloomy, and I was just like, that's cool, it's right up my alley. I'll take a listen.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. And I feel like that's kind of a lot of your work is it seems a lot of very autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
That's true?
Yeah. Super journalistic. At least the last 10 years of it. It's either like goofy, like I'm either really trying to make myself laugh, or it's very journalistic, or if I'm lucky, it's both. But I think a lot of it splits into those categories, unless it's just completely fiction. If it, it's like I did a couple concept records that are just fiction that have nothing to do with me, but
right.
But I think you're right. The majority of the records, at least the ones that people gravitate towards, are those.
Okay.
Are autobiographical.
So how does that feel for you? I mean, like, does that freak you out to try to put something out like that's that personal? I
think it doesn't. It's weird. It's not. I've never received negative. I haven't had. I think what scares people from doing that, from putting out a super vulnerable or like naked, let's just call it like a naked, lyrically naked kind of thing, is that I think you're kind of fundamentally afraid, not unlike in your interpersonal relationships, you're fundamentally afraid that someone's going to look at your naked body and go, you're gross. And, like, you're like, I don't want to look at you. And I think that, that just hasn't happened to me with music. Those people probably exist, and people probably have been pretty turned off by some of the stuff I've done, but I don't talk to them. Like they haven't emailed me to tell me how much of a turnoff my personal feelings are or whatever. So I think it's only been a rewarding experience. So I've been encouraged repeatedly to be more and more vulnerable. Like if anything, and I think that's just true as people, especially as we're adults and we don't have as much, we have a better control of our emotions, or our emotional intelligence is higher. It's a little easier to be vulnerable and not be so afraid that someone's going to tell you you're gross, because vulnerability is rewarded. That's a shorter way to say what I'm saying, is that in music, especially at a time when maybe the majority of the artists aren't being very vulnerable, it feels like, especially maybe pop music, like it's rewarded. The compliment is always, I like that I feel like I know you, or I like that I feel like you're being really honest about this, or I like that you expose this, uncomfortable part of yourself or something.
Right, and it's relatable to people.
It's relatable.
For the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. If you show people your nakedness, inevitably most of them
will show you their nakedness too.
Yeah, they totally will. No, like the number one thing that happens to me is I'm at shows and people will come up and tell me what's happened to them. Right. It'll be like, that song reminds me of my life because of this thing, and then they'll be very vulnerable about what happened to them or whatever.
So I was thinking though, because like I don't really play music much anymore, but I found that when I try at home here and like pick up the guitar and just try to sing a song, even if it's a cover, I can't fucking get through it because I get so like sad.
Really?
Like, yeah, I get too emotional that I can't even sing. I just start to fucking cry. So I'm like, okay, I just can't do this at all. Like, how does conveying such a, intimate song to you and a vulnerable song, like, how can you even do it?
Oh, I'm kind of psyched if it pushes me to tears. I just think that's cathartic, and if it might be self-indulgent too. I don't know, but like if a song, it's such a success, if you could play something that gets you, like that's so awesome. If you could play a cover and you got to the place in some ways emotionally the same place that the writer might have got to, that it moved you to that extent is such a success. That's huge. Like
Yeah.
if I got to the point where I was crying, it would be a huge success because I would have successfully put myself in the place of that song, which is what you should be doing if you're performing it. If I could get to the place where the song I wrote 10 years ago still moves me in the performance, that's a feat of performance that you managed to make sure you went back to the place so you're performing it honestly. Like I would see that as a big success. Like it's a
Hmm.
compliment to the songwriters that you're playing when you do that, but also that you're being that open that you can be moved that much. If you weren't, like, that just shows you that you're being open-hearted while you play. That's really a good thing. I think
Oh,
that's amazing. Sitting with it, and it's a huge success by the piece. If a movie can move me, if a commercial can move me, that's like I'm amazed that someone could direct a Burger King commercial that could get me like to tears, right? Uh,
yeah.
it's
Well,
like,
when you become a parent, it becomes pretty easy.
yeah, I think you're right. I think you're
Yeah.
right. It's anything I see with dads in it, it tears me up. So I'm kind of an easy kill if you tap on certain themes. I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you didn't have any children, right?
No, but I helped raise a child for the last 5 years or so that it
Oh,
very much feels like my child, and I love just like my child, and so I feel like a parent. But we're split up now. She's not technically my child anymore,
right.
um, but I got to experience parenthood and what it does to your heart and all these things, and so those themes all resonate very loudly with me anyway.
Hmm. Okay. I invited you here to talk about, your musical background, kind of stuff that you've done musically, as well as, how you kind of got started.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
I and I think Brendan probably covered a bunch of it. His memory, by the way, is way better than mine. So I actually like him to tell any uh any of Grüvis Malt's history. He's so much better than me. At least in terms of hard facts, for sure. But I
okay.
would say, let's see, I've been playing music for a long time. I was classically trained as a kid, and then jazz trained as a teenager when I was 15 or so. Suzuki trained as a kid, so much more ear training than sight reading.
Oh,
Sight
okay.
reading always lacked. And then Grüvis Malt was, I think, 12 years of, playing in Grüvis Malt in New England. And then and doing a couple other things always on the side and stuff. But I was doing that, and I was sort of pseudo managing the band in some ways, but booking and I don't know. I was doing a lot in that band. That was a lot. And
Hmm.
then we were doing, I think, and then about the same year we stopped. Just about the same year we stopped, I started doing solo stuff. It was like technology caught up to the point where I could have some of it, and so I could finally record myself and do everything myself, sort of. So I put out 2 records in 2004. That was really just all those ideas that I'd kind of built up and just were kind of gushing out of me because of access to computer, like software that could help me manifest these ideas,
Hmm.
and of course frustrations from being in a band, and frustrations from being a really stupid teenager, and frustrations from whatever, like my family. And anyway, I just kind of shot out these first 2 records, and then I was really rapid fire for a couple of years of putting out a lot of records in Rhode Island, lots of solo stuff. And then Ibu Gogo was a trio with half of the guys from Grüvis. Brendan played drums on that. We put out 2 records and toured a bunch, and then when that ended, that's when I was doing my first like label record for solo stuff. Might have been my last too. And I did that, and that's when I moved to Oregon. So I did that, and then I was doing just a lot of solo records over the last decade. And then don't know if this is too glossed over, but just just a lot of records and stuff, and lots of solo work, playing in other bands here and there. I would like be in a band for a tour, like, or play on people's records and make some friends. And I did some touring with friends that we would kind of combine our bands to be able to do both people's sets and stuff like that. So there's kind of a family of musicians that I carved a path with for a bunch of years. And then eventually, somewhere in 2014, I joined the Deer Hunter as their keyboardist. And that was for 5 years. I was in that band as a keyboardist and doing solo stuff on the side of that. And then I just left that band before I moved here, maybe 2 months ago, and now just solo stuff, and kind of random production stuff for other people. Like I'm mixing a friend's record or producing some tracks for this band or whatever.
Right.
Little things here and there. But I'm at kind of a weird moment where I'm just like deciding what I'm going to do next.
Yeah,
So,
you're in that transition period. I mean, you just moved back here. I didn't even know any of this was happening with you.
it's a weird time to catch me, for real. Like it's just it's a beautiful time in a way because the road is wide open, but I don't have this clear roadmap of like, and this is what, like I purposely worked this year to create a situation where I can buy myself a couple months of not having any obligations whatsoever. So yeah,
Wow.
that's my life in a little,
Very little nutshell.
very little nutshell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. So tell me about the first instrument you learned to play, I imagine, was piano.
Yes.
And so you said you started young, you were classically trained.
I think I was supposed to play violin, but my fingers were too fat. And we started me on that, and I just had these little sausages that are now just bigger sausages, and I couldn't like really. And so I was also on piano, but I might have been a violinist had I had not had a hobbit's hands or whatever. And so I ended up on piano. Yes, we were all trained from a young age to be. That was just a rule in our family. It's like you have to play piano.
Oh, that's not a bad rule. I mean, piano's a very good instrument to learn.
It is. I'm lucky for that, for sure. It's one of those classic things that your parents force you to do that you resent right up until you don't, and then you thank them like, okay, it was kind of cool that you forced me to do this thing, and I hated it.
Hmm.
So I definitely have that feeling of
Yeah.
just.
And so what was music like in your house growing up?
It was a strangely, extremely limited what outside music we had. Like I had access to like Neil Diamond's greatest hits, the Beach Boys' greatest hits, and Disney, and that was it. But I had a lot of catching up to do as soon as I started making friends that were grown in a more normal pop culture kind of way. That like Brendan actually is the one who I think he's the one that kind of got me into 80s metal kind of stuff, and then got me into probably Nirvana after that or whatever. Like he and hip hop and like. It was friends that had normal siblings and families, not that mine aren't normal, but that were into pop culture, that educated me about that stuff. I don't have the same because I had these 13 years or so of like really specific and limited music.
Yeah. So wait, is that when you met Brendan when you were 13?
I think so. It was fifth grade.
Okay.
It was fifth grade, and it was the right age for like you to get cassette tapes or whatever. It was like his parents bought him music, and my parents, and so, and I kind of lived at his house after that. Like I ended up, his parents felt like my parents for a long time, and he was just raised in a much more MTV household where like,
Yeah.
because of that, I got access to all that stuff that my family wasn't as like. Loud about. I don't know. It was weird. It's very weird now. I didn't know it at the time. You just think like Neil Diamond's greatest hits is all there is. That's all you need.
Right. Well, so then, so you meet Brendan. He's kind of introducing you to music. What's the first record you end up buying for yourself?
The very first thing I ever got was a 7-inch for a Fisher Price thing, and it was "We Built This City" by Starship. Still a very important song to me. That has still influenced me for sure, embarrassingly so, but it's just such a shiny production, and there's keyboards and synths and all this stuff. As a kid, that was just fascinating and interesting, And my first real records though, that was just the single, and it was because the neighbor's kid had it and he left it at my house or something. You know, it wasn't like it
Okay.
was because I chose that song. It's just like, okay, here's this weird Starship Fisher record or whatever. I got I think in third grade, someone gave me Fresh Prince and Def Leppard, but it wasn't Hysteria. It was Pyromania or something. And at the time, it was right when Pour Some Sugar on Me came out. And so I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. This is awesome. And then I take it home and play. I'm like, where's Pour Some Sugar on Me? Like, what is this record? Like, I was not happy. I did not listen to it.
This drummer's got two arms. This doesn't work at all.
I know. Totally. That's so funny. But it is interesting that my first two records were like kind of rock and rap, because those end up forging this path, though it's not like from then I bought more and more tapes. It's like I just had those tapes because someone gave them to me, and that's all I had for till I met Brendan 2 years later. And he's got Guns N' Roses and Metallica and Megadeth, and we're like starting to listen to all that stuff, you know, because he has the cassettes, so we're just listening to that in his room all the time. And Brendan's an audiophile, like he listens to everything, and his older sister got us into like The Cure, and he introduced me to Faith No More, and then we find Mr. Bungle, and like all these things come through his gleaning all this. And his dad is like an avid listener of folk music and classical and all this stuff, so I kind of siphoned that off of that family, the Bells, in a way.
All right, and so wait, so now you we're going to skip forward ahead a little bit, because so the album you chose tonight was D'Angelo's Voodoo.
Yes.
So tell me about when you first came into D'Angelo. I don't know if you listened to Brown Sugar first, or if this was the first experience with it.
I hadn't heard Brown Sugar, and I figured out, I was thinking about this yesterday to prepare for this. I was like, how did I even hear it? What happened? And it's because I worked at a video store, and they gave us promotional copies of the movie Belly. And on the movie Belly, the second or third track called Devil's Pie is on the score for Belly.
Oh, okay.
And I think what happened was they gave us promotional VHS tapes and CDs of the score to the store. And I just took it. I was like, yeah, I'll have this. Because like we were allowed to just have the promotional stuff. The manager didn't really, or the owner didn't really care. So I took it home and I watched the movie, I think, and that song came on. I was like, what is this song? Like, it really impressed me. And then I had the CD, and I didn't listen. Like, once I found that track, that's the only track I listened to over and over. I was like kind of obsessed with the Devil's Pie track. And then the album came out, and I was like, oh, that's the guy that did the Devil's Pie song. So I got D'Angelo's The Voodoo record, and I put it on. And I put it on again, and then it's like I just listened to it every night for like 2 years or something. Like I just zoned out on this record over and over and fell in love with it. So it was by way of this random promotional copy of Belly and this one song on it that I must have ended up with the Voodoo album.
Yeah.
And actually, I have this funny random anecdotal story of on the Voodoo tour. I just remember this. On the Voodoo tour, my friend Tony from that band Rustic Overtones called me one time and he said, hey, dude, I have an extra ticket to see D'Angelo in Boston tonight. Do you want to come? We're going to go backstage. I think he said we're going backstage because they knew somebody. And I was like, we have practice tonight. I can't. And I didn't go because I was so rigid and so like obsessed with, I was like, I get mad when other people don't show up for practice. I can't do that to my band. That would be hypocritical. You know, like now looking back, I just can't even believe that was made sense to me. But I skipped to see him in the prime, like in this amazing moment of that tour, promoting that record, because I thought that I should go to like a 3-hour screaming match at practice or whatever. You know, it probably wasn't the best practice. So anyway. I always think about how I missed this opportunity to see that tour, and I didn't.
Wow.
In a really dumb way, but yeah, that's the story of how I found the record. Anyway, from the Belly soundtrack, and I think I just went to Tom's Tracks on Thayer Street and bought it when it came out
on CD.
Yeah, on CD, and like poured over the liner notes and everything, which were super like dense and like hard to read and all this stuff, and it really had the Voodoo effect on me. It like, you know, something about the way first track hits and everything, it like sucked me in.
Yeah.
It totally changed me as an artist. Just this one album of like.
Right. So before we start playing the record, just because you said that, so this record came out in 2002, January 25th, I believe. So considering you got it as soon as it came out, you were already...
It came out?
2000. Did I say 2002?
Yeah, 2000.
I'm sorry, 2000.
Okay, yeah.
January 25th, 2000.
Yeah, that sounds right. Okay.
So you were already in Grüvis Malt by that point.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys were already kind of killing it at that point.
Well, as killing it as you could be in
I mean, you were like 4
We're
years
doing
into it by that point, right?
Yeah, you're right. 4 years. In 2000, we were where our world was we were getting some attention from some industry folks. That's the year we recorded something for Sony as like a demo deal thing. It was starting to look like we might do something. You know what I mean? Like things were starting to work in our favor, and we were starting to open for a lot of bands and stuff like that. That's about that time, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is that? What does this music have? Like, how does it affect what you did from that point forth?
Well, for what it's worth, I don't know how much the album infected Grüvis Malt. It infected me. I don't know that. I don't know how hard I tried to push it on anyone else in the band, but I don't remember anyone else in the band getting into it. Not nearly to the level I did, and I just don't even remember. I don't even remember Brendan getting into it, and he would normally be the guy that would listen to everything. So, as was such a big piece of it, like what it shifted in me as a musician, one of say 5 or 6 major things it changed the way I looked at, was of course rhythm and the way that he instantiated this Jay Dilla swagger into soul music and made these weird drunk beats, and just the lazy timing of everything that broke all these rules to me as a classically trained artist and a somewhat jazz trained artist, of like things just not falling on the eighth notes anymore, and they're not being eighth notes, and pushing a pocket so far back that it's almost on the next beat and things like that, and then pushing some things forward and being vocally that far behind the beat. Like there's all these things about that broke my mind open about rhythm. It just made, in the same way this whole generation right now is being broken open about rhythm for the same reason, because they found Jay Dilla. It's like that thing would have been what I would have tried to push on Grüvis Malt. It's like, let's just be lazier. Let's just be lazier. Like funkier. But and so there might be songs where, but I would say vocally you probably don't hear much D'Angelo influence on the Grüvis Malt stuff at all.
Right. But it definitely came afterwards and with your solo work.
Yeah, with my solo work, it's super heavy. All of a sudden my solo work, I'm like trying to work in all these influences loudly. There's a lot of like Bjork and a lot of D'Angelo and a lot of whatever. Like, so.
Okay, cool. All right, well, so let's try to get into this record a little bit. That is fucking crazy.
It so is. Oh, gosh.
I never listened to this record until you suggested it for the show.
I feel like you would love it. Did you like it? What did you think?
I do like it. Yeah. I like it. I mean, it's not my favorite. It's not my style really. I mean, okay. I dig funk music. I dig some soul stuff. So I like at first I was just like, D'Angelo, this is not going to be great. But this record, I mean, like I even listened to Brown Sugar like once, and I was just like, this one's way better. Yeah,
it's a whole different world.
I don't know. I think it's pretty crazy. I read about the weird time signatures and like how they're like. I even saw an interview with Questlove as he kind of broke it down. He's just like, it's like I'm no theory guy. I don't know theory at all. But the mathematical way that he explained it, and he was just like, imagine it's 4 beats, right? So then you basically have like 7 hits in those 4 beats.
Yeah.
And so they're all kind of like weird and like not lined up precisely. Yeah. And you can totally hear it in just that little bit that we heard. I was just like, especially now, like in headphones, I'm just like, Jesus Christ, this sounds fucking weird. Like,
yeah, it's very strange. The first time I heard it was definitely strange, and it took a while to get over myself and be like, that's wrong though. Like there's still people that call it sloppy instead of, I consider it just hyper precise, where it's like, it's not just playing behind the beat doesn't mean it's sloppy. It means exactly where he wanted it, and the pocket, and the crazier ability to Pino Palladino to play the bass over that it was alien. It was alien when it happened, for sure. And that's a big piece of its impact on me. What it was in the moment it came out, this is a great example of like, even if it's a timeless record, even if it still sounds good, whatever, but the context of it is also very critical to why this record is a very important record in soul music, because you have to know that Tony was the hottest thing or whatever around that time, that like soul music was on a very different path. For them to do that kind of record, track it the way they did and all this stuff is actually very bizarre at the time, or very ballsy. Very ballsy. You know?
Yeah. All right. So let's get back to the song Playa Playa. So this song seems to be the best opening track because D'Angelo is laying it out there, telling listeners right off the bat exactly what his intention is to give his absolute best here and now, you know?
Yeah.
So, so what do you think has been your crowning achievement up to this moment?
My crowning achievement?
Yeah, like the best, your best work.
My best work. It's always gonna just be my last record. So it would be, I guess, Here You Go. Like I might have favorite songs that aren't on that record or something. I'm like, that's a good piece of writing, or that's a good piece of writing. But it's so culminating to me that like everyone better, for me at least, be better than the last one. I don't know. If you ask a fan, you'll get a very different answer, right? Like they will tell you, well, it's this record because whatever. But for me, it's all building steam. I'm just always applying, like every mix I do better be better than my last mix. Every production hopefully will incorporate everything I learned from the last one and then apply it. So I guess it's the last record.
Think about all the records you've made, all of the songs, even piece by piece, you know?
Yeah.
Over all the years that you've been doing it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of, you know, you'd be the best person to ask. Like, I wouldn't want to ask one of your fans because they, like, what the fuck do they know? I mean, they're just fans. They just listen to your music and enjoy it. Like, it
will be whatever they listen to at this moment in their life when they needed to hear that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's going to resonate the same way. If I heard this record, Voodoo, when I needed to hear it for it to rewrite the way I look at melody and harmony and rhythm. I needed for someone to shake up that wiring so I didn't delve too deeply in one direction, or start thinking of new ideas with rhythm and not like get. And so for me, Voodoo's the biggest deal, right? But for some people, for younger people, it's probably his new record, maybe, or whatever, you know, or it doesn't resonate at all with them. But that's my moment of like neuroplasticity. Is I'm whatever age I was in that moment, and that's when I needed to hear it.
Okay. So let's move on to the next song.
Yes.
Devil's Pie. Nice.
Yeah, I think that must be the first D'Angelo I ever heard was that track.
Right.
Yeah.
I can see how like compelling it could be because it's just like it's such a weird for hip hop even at that time, 1999ish, you know.
Yeah.
Like just that weird squeaking thing, that weird fucking squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like that immediately grabbed me and I was just like, it's crazy. So weird. Devil's Pie, I was revisiting my conversation with Brendan about Grüvis Malt, and so I heard a lot of the stories about the band and kind of what had happened and stuff that had gone on with the band. Do you feel that some of the decisions the band made were made to avoid Devil's Pie?
Yeah, totally. I think that sometimes I could simplify our trajectory and think of it as like, and I think Brennan's joked about this with me the other day, or maybe he wasn't really joking or anything, but he was saying something to the effect of like, we had these opportunities right in front of us and we were so stupid that we were really resistant. We had it in our head. I think I now feel in my older age that I really misunderstood what integrity means. I had a very naive and childish vision of what that word and what it means to have integrity. I thought integrity was about rigidity, and I think that's just all kinds of wrong now. And I think that, but I think we had these opportunities from time to time of this guy from here really liked us, or this guy wanted us to talk to his label. Like we had some labels that were interested. We had some people that were well connected trying to help us. And I think we were just so worried. But I think also really critical to understand is at that age, this is kind of pre-internet for the most part. And at that age, you're really hearing these stories of, this is also the era of major labels just completely screwing artists left and right. So there's all these stories that are starting to come out, but you're not hearing them firsthand really either. But there are these stories of, yeah, these guys, they got their record shelved for like 3 years. And they're not allowed to do anything. And these guys, they thought they were going to have full creative control, and then the producer did everything, and then he took all the points on the album, and they don't get paid. And these guys, you're hearing these stories from people you tour with and other artists and wherever you hear stories in that era. And so we were very, very cautious about the man or the music industry in general corrupting and or taking us and like ruining what we were trying to do. And I think now in retrospect, I'm like overly cautious and not really understanding that there's a nice middle path there where it's working with a producer doesn't mean you've sold out. Working with a producer might just be someone with way more experience than you that will help you make better decisions to realize your own vision. But at the time, it might have felt more like they're trying to make us sound like this band, and we don't want to sound, like we were just too worried that we would get corrupted by an outside force. And so I think we really kept a lot of people at arm's distance. That would have actually probably helped us get somewhere if we had just understood that we weren't in danger of these things. We needed to worry about these things. And so the devil's pie would be the very vague fear of like major labels just all together. Like this can only go bad for us. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that happened with Lakeshore, no doubt. I mean, they also were a toxic entity in some ways, but I also think we didn't know how to play ball at all. We just didn't. I didn't. Is more me than anybody else. Was me just going, I don't know, I don't trust this guy. Like just really, really overly cautious. And we should have been more realizing like there's not that much money in you guys anyway. Like you're not the next, like it's not, the stakes aren't as high as you think they are when it's your music and you're like,
right.
You're not going to be that big. So
right. So with this song, knowing that this song was kind of the one that inspired it all for the rest of the album, this was the first song that he wrote, before the rest of this record came to be. What do you look to for inspirations?
Inspirations? It's all trauma. I think it's just trauma, really. I mean, I think it depends on if I'm, like I was saying before about doing either super journalistic or comedic / let's say fictional music, like those worlds, like writing to amuse myself or writing because I need to say something or I need to get something out. That music, like those things, fiction and comedy are just inspired by whatever at the moment is funny or interesting to me. Whereas if I have to write a song, it's because something happened or because I'm ruminating on something or lately when there's not much happening and I'm not traumatized and I'm kind of enjoying life a lot more, it's like, okay, I smell this problem with people, with us, and I want to articulate it. That's so it's really should be easy to do in a pandemic. Like anyone should be able to comment on isolation and social media overwhelmingness and lack of progress in your life or insecurities around your career and stuff like that. Like these are all themes. QAnon, totally. These are all themes that like everybody could relate to and could comment on. So I'd be more likely to write about more general issues right now. But that's because I've somewhat gotten through a lot of the humps and traumas of my 20s and 30s.
I kind of wanted to start this whole thing off earlier by asking you the simple question, are you okay? Because, after listening to your music and listening to like your last record and stuff, I was just like, are you all right, man? Is everything okay?
Well, that's a funny, I appreciate you asking that. That's very kind of you. Yes, I am. And I would say that the irony about releasing albums about trauma is that like, if the album made it out, then I'm probably through it. Like I would still be writing that record if I wasn't. I would still be like, or I'd be on like, okay, this is gonna be a double album. Like I'm still not okay. Like if you write for catharsis and therapy, then like that's just ironic to me because that has happened to me multiple times where people go, "Are you doing okay?" And I'm like, "Oh, that song's like a year ago. Like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm done. I did that. Like that was that week or that was that year, and like I'm through it." So you're hearing me process the grief, and then I'm done processing for the most part.
Hmm.
So here you go is that album is processing. That's all it is. It's just, step by step as you're losing your family or breaking up or doing what you're doing with your relationships or your family. This is just the steps you go through and how you try to turn each of them into something useful instead of just pain. And
Right.
then you're done and you package it up and it's a record and you can apply those lessons hopefully and you try to give them to people to uh, make what you did not just about loss and make it useful hopefully. And
Right.
so I don't, it's funny because I'm not nearly in the place I was when I wrote those songs. Like I'm doing great. I'm totally
Good.
fine. I just, yeah.
So, with that being said about this vengeful woman's effect on the narrator, would you care to divulge the vengeful nature of your last album? Here you go.
The vengeful nature. Am I the vengeful woman in this scenario?
I
What
know
do
I can't tell. I don't. I mean, I don't know. I think that there seems to definitely be a lot of um. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot. It seems like the context in which you're singing some of those songs sounds like you might be singing from either person's perspective.
oh yeah, yeah.
Like you flip back and forth.
That's a good observation. That's very, very good observation. There's one. The first song is not from my perspective. It's from sometimes in a record like that. Like there's two songs in particular, or three songs really, I think, where I'm collecting multiple people and making and addressing somebody. So I might make a song like that song that's critical of myself. That's me being criticized by my partner or my ex or something. But it also might be uh, a collection of complaints by like multiple partners. It's not. It won't necessarily be just this one person that I just ended a relationship. It could be like, and sometimes that might be by verse. Sometimes it's just, well, here's a complaint that like six different girlfriends all say. So I'm just gonna have this character is gonna say this thing to you, or that's. So sometimes it's an amalgamation, or sometimes somebody I'm talking to is four different people, but that all have the same trait, and so I'm addressing all of them in a way, or
Hmm.
um,
Okay.
and so that song is the first song, I should say, is not from my perspective. It's critical of me, critical of other people like me, and it's sort of my interpretation of what my ex would want to say to me. Well,
Right.
what's hard about me, what's hard to be with about me, what's toxic about me, or what's painful, and then and that's what I refer to sometimes as like an empathy exercise of going, all right, let me try and write in the from the voice of somebody being critical of myself and see if I can nail that, see if I can really do that. And then in the next song, let me flip. And there's certain lyrics in that song that are supposed to hint at that in case it's confusing and someone were to think that, who am I talking to now? There's talking about hiding bottles, and then there's you're doing this, I'm doing this. There's kind of like this way that you shouldn't. If you pay really close attention to the lyrics, you would see that like the perspective on these incidents is changing. But so
Hmm.
it will start with an empathy exercise and say, let me first like criticize myself as best I can from their perspective and see if I can, and also set the audience's expectation that like this isn't just me just ranting about my perspective on things. I do diligence and point out that like this is all extremely biased. This is me, and let me do my best to try and give a voice to this person that doesn't get a voice because she doesn't put an album out. And so the first
Right.
song is kind of stabbing at myself and trying to teach myself something from her perspective, and then the perspective flips, and it's me going through all the stages of this separation and trying to express the pain in as loving a way as possible. But there's always bitterness under that, and there's always frustrations and humiliations and all these, really
Hmm.
crappy feelings. But try to make them come out as love in some way.
Well, yeah, I think that that's beautiful that you were able to capture. you know, and be humble enough to kind of allow for that other perspective to be brought into the story, and to kind of like share each other's like kind of pains and like, you know, downfalls.
Yeah, yeah.
Like neither person in the context of the story is completely justified.
Right.
It seems, you know, it's just like you both have faults, you both have problems.
Yeah.
This is just not working out type thing, and it's a very equal balance.
Yeah. Totally.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's very beautiful. It's very very mature and
On an album very well without giving them 50% of the vocals, but like,
right.
but it's an attempt at least. I doubt that she would feel completely spoken for, understood, or would it, you know what I mean? Like I can't do that with my record about my pain.
Right.
It's an exercise anyway to try to zoom out of a record that's extremely zoomed in. You know, this is like very much about my feelings about things and my really subjective experience with our relationship.
Right.
So, yeah, but it's a hard record for sure. It was a super painful record for her to hear, and painful, you know, especially if you can't. Just the public nature of a record itself adds a layer of humiliation to trying to hear the love in it. Would be that much harder, you know.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Cool, man. All right. Well, hey, you know, we're gonna wrap it up over here, but I'm excited to know that you're back in the state for at least a little while.
Okay.
Good talking, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for doing this.
Thank
I'll
you.
talk to you later.
See ya.